let's say the mother that is devout and believes in God, and the father who is there for business and connections and, all this kind of stuff, they're going to have two completely different approaches to teaching and raising their kids, but they belong to the same religion.
Yeah. And on the outside, it looks like everything is great.
Yeah.
And then they're showing up on Sundays, they're laughing it up. But in the home, in the most intimate moments, they're not going to have any regard or intimacy whatsoever.
Welcome to 12-Week Relationships. This is your place for better relationships in weeks, not years. My name is Pye.
I'm Dr. Glenn.
Okay, so today's episode, I'm kind of excited about because, I'm excited about all of our episodes, but I'm really excited because we got episode 9 and 10 out of the way. That was a little bit...
That was very emotional.
It was kind of draining to go through that process, right?
Yeah, it was like cathartic, but it was definitely like draining for sure.
Yeah, I've worked hard to forget all of it. So to write it all down again and to like outline it and be like, okay, these are our talking points. Let's go. Then to relive it. I was like, don't like that.
Yeah, I know. We did it twice too. So
we did it twice.
It was a very emotional week.
Yeah, the first time Anthony was like, guys, you probably need an outline because that was all over the place.
Yeah, no, that was more for, I felt like that was just more for us.
Yeah.
The first time around. And then the second time was like, okay, let's put it out there.
Yeah. So in today's episode, and now kind of just going forward, we've introduced the podcast, kind of what we do, how we got into this, our why and everything. Now we get to do the super fun stuff. We get to talk about our research, different specific topics. We get to talk about problems that our listeners are having and that they're submitting to us. That's actually what we're going to do today. So we have a question from a listener. And if you guys would like to submit, find us on social media at 12-Week Relationships, send us a DM, and we will bring it on air. And of course, it is anonymous. So we can see your name in the DM, but we're not going to mention you by name
it's
on
all
the podcast.
Confidential.
All confidential, just like our coaching and everything that we do. So the question, I'm going to read this one just so I make sure I get it right. My boyfriend's parents don't want him to continue dating me because I'm not part of their religion. What should I do? I'm going to let you jumpstart us. But before that, Chris mentioned to me, our business partner, is like, I think you need to mention the website and quiz and what you guys actually do before the end of the podcast, because I don't think anybody knows. So look, if you guys want to go to 12weekrelationships.com, this is where you can sign up for individual as well as couples coaching with Dr. Glenn. You get to live and go through this entire 12-week framework that we've developed to help people understand what does a healthy relationship look like. And along the way, they're going to address and resolve past trauma and just get to a much better place.
Yeah, it's a systematic framework. And basically we go step by step, individual accountability for what you bring to relationships, defining what a healthy relationship is and taking you through that journey, whether you're with someone or not, like you become a healthy partner.
Yeah. And the beautiful side of it, we call it coaching for several reasons. Number one is that I just want this to be something different than counseling because we know academically that counseling is not effective. The other side of this is we incorporate. The beauty of academics is there's so much great research, but it never makes its way down to licensed professionals for many different reasons. But this coaching program is a way that we can bring the academic world into a practical setting and actually get you to a good place in a 12-week period as opposed to subscribing for therapy, which is what it usually is. But there's also a fun self-assessment quiz on the website too. So you guys can sign up for a free consult. You guys can get into the self-assessment quiz, which I think was really fun creating. And with that now, let's go to the question.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so should I point out the 2 red flags?
Yes, please.
I'm going to point them out and then you're going to go first. Red flag number 1, the boyfriend is actually deferring to the parents. Like they're heavily involved and clearly his value set is kind of under this respect my parents no matter what type. He's coming to his girlfriend and saying, my parents don't want me to do this. That's kind of a red flag that I want to talk about. But also being in the same religion doesn't necessarily constitute having similar values. And again, kind of pointing at the fact that he's not saying himself that he has a problem with it. He's saying that his parents have a problem with it, meaning that value set might not be the religion itself, it's his parents.
Well, besides that though, like if I were her, the other red flag is the fact that he's not at least the way the question's being framed, he's not showing independence.
Correct.
Because if he were like really staunch on his religious beliefs, he would just say it to her directly and probably wouldn't have dated her. So that's another red flag.
He wouldn't have started, right? He wouldn't have gotten it to begin with, because he would have said, I believe this, and well,
this is how I feel.
Yeah, that's it.
But he didn't do that. And then, I mean, I'm not saying that they're going to get together or marry or whatever, but that's kind of a red flag, because it probably means that the parents are going to be heavily involved in that relationship between now and forever. So those are some red flags to consider besides just the religious question itself.
So basically, you're already saying run.
I'm
run
just saying
for your dear life.
Be wary. Like, be wary. I mean, have these conversations for sure.
You don't need to listen to the rest of the podcast. We're done.
We're done. This episode's over.
Just kidding. I'm totally kidding. Although I do believe, from my perspective, like, not a spoiler alert, but from my perspective, this is bad news bears for, at least, like you said, the way that this question is framed. I know this is a very real situation that people get into. It's actually quite common, but it doesn't help just to know, well, that my opinion is, get away, or like you're saying, like, you need to dive deeper and understand this. I think what's going to help is discussing the why behind each of these things. So why don't we start with the pros of dating within your religion? And I'm going to begin with that same assumption that these pros only exist when both people are dating within a religion that they both believe for the same underlying reasons, meaning that the underlying driver, the underlying core value is identical.
No, agreed. Because when you tie in religion, you're doing this for a higher power. You're doing this for God. You're doing this for a greater purpose than yourself.
Well, you should be.
But
what do people, what are the underlying values for people that are that are religious?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people can say that, but it masks the fact that people have underlying reasons, and that's not one of the reasons.
What would those be?
To find a partner.
That's a good one.
The red flag about
flirt to convert, bro.
Flirt to convert, right? Exactly. Culture, right? Okay. Like, it could just be part of your culture.
Yeah.
Tradition, parental influence.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, some people just do it for, I have friends and it feels safe.
Yeah. You get to I studied quite a bit of religion, and if I didn't become Mormon, I probably would have become Catholic. This is when I was younger. I'm not practicing anything right now, but I remember that Catholicism, guilt is a big part of the underlying motivator, the value set. You could do it for guilt. Yeah.
I mean, Korean culture is the same. Like, everything is kind of guilt related. So Christianity and the guilt and you're a sinner.
Yeah.
It all tied in, because my mom she's religious. My father wasn't. But even when I got older, he's like, you need to go to church, even though he doesn't believe, to find a wife. And it was just all tied in.
Now, I'm curious, social connection is also a huge underlying value set for why people go to church or why they're religious. I attended, Chinese Christian churches for, 15 years, 16 years. And I found that to be, it was present inside of like Western Christian, churches. But man, inside of Chinese churches, that social friendship aspect was 1,000 times more present. Like, we are there because we want to make friends, talk, gossip, like all that aspect of it. But that's why they were there.
Yeah, I mean, similarly in the Korean culture, like, it became more about couples and hooking up, and finding a marriage partner. Like, that became the value set within the church, in my opinion, more than the actual like serving God itself.
Yeah,
because it was so prioritized, it was so ingrained. Because parents in general would be like, you have to get married.
Yeah,
you have to do this. You have to have grandkids.
And we should also add that there is also the underlying value set of wanting to be there for spiritual growth, like developing your relationship with God. That can also be one of your reasons.
And if you do that, like, within the, the place I was at, the people that really believed that, it was a beautiful thing. Yeah. Like, they had really great relationships. They had a built-in structure. Their purpose was higher than themselves. It was a beautiful relationship. So it's not knocking it, but just saying, like, you have to look within and really be honest about why you're doing what you're doing.
Totally. And for those that are like, well, how do I know why somebody's doing something that they do? in my opinion, the easiest way to know is to look at the action, but don't just stop there. Look at kind of the underlying why and what continues to happen during that moment. See, like that sounded like super fluffy. Anthony's probably rolling his eyes like, what the hell are you talking about, Pye? But what I'm saying is, like, if someone says that I'm spiritual, I go to church because I love God, then I would expect not only do you go to church, but when you're there, you're focused, you're listening, you're maybe taking notes, you're reading, you're meditating, you're praying, you're doing whatever you would do to support that underlying value, because that is a value. When you say I'm spiritual, but then you go to church and you spend most of your time talking with friends, you spend most of your time, just sitting next to your parents, you spend most of your time, or maybe when your parents aren't there because you've moved to a different city or you're traveling, you don't go to church. When you're at church, maybe you spend your time on your phone and you're doing business. So when you get to that activity, you have to look at the action and then look at a person's sort of engagement during the activity to see what the underlying why is.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just the spoken word, it's what they do.
Correct.
And I remember, like, when I was in that community, there was a couple, like, they were both medical doctors, but they really believed that the world was going to end and that they needed to, preach the word. So they sold their house and they went to the Middle East. And people are like, you're crazy for doing that, because how can you take away, like, you have kids and you have such a great stable life and you have a community, how can you do that? But they really believed what they were doing and they were living it every day. So it was such a noble thing that they were doing.
Yeah, that's very common too in like Mormonism, is to serve a mission together as a couple. When you're older and the kids have moved out, you go and you spend 18 months, 2 years, serving and doing service work. And again, with a shared underlying value, it's a beautiful thing. So I guess all this is to say that we're going to get into the pros of why you might want to consider dating within your religion. Mm-hmm. But what we're saying is that for these pros to have any validity, for them to actually work, you have to be going to that religion for the same reasons. Correct. And those reasons kind of have to hold up over time. So your values need to be aligned in that. And it's very easy to think that just because we belong to the same religion, we share the same values. And the reality is not that. The reality is that out of 100 people sitting next to you, you're more likely to have differing values than you are identical ones.
No, I agree. And the reason I brought up that example was there was within that community, a very small number were like, man, that's so noble. I support this mission and what they're doing. But the majority of people, even though it's the same community and same religious belief, they're like, they're crazy. How can you do that? But people are going every Sunday. They're reading, they're studying, they're learning about the faith. But the majority of the people were like, these people are crazy.
Yeah.
So it showed their value system that they probably don't believe as much as they really do. They're in it for other reasons.
For sure. Okay, so let's stick then with the pros, with the assumption that you're both believing in the religion for identical underlying reasons. Your core values are lined up. Pro number one would be improved relatability and intimacy. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, if you really have a shared core value and you guys have the similar belief, that's just going to promote intimacy in your relationship, because everything that you guys do is based on the belief that you guys believe in a God or believe in this purpose. There's no greater intimacy than that. Yeah,
and on that side of, like, for sure, the emotional intimacy and closeness, and that comes in several ways, we think sex. I mean, when you say intimacy, my mind goes straight to sex.
Sex for sure. But then also, like,
but it's more than that.
But prayer, and then the time studying together and doing, like, outreach work. All of that is intimacy because they're living their shared belief and shared core values.
Yeah. Now, within our framework, so those that are listening, you're going to hear our framework being used constantly throughout every single episode. And so core values is one piece on that sustainability side. This is the archstone, the foundation of a healthy relationship is aligned core values. But on the other side of desire, the want for a relationship, what we're talking about is relatability. When you say intimacy, I think relatability. That's that, it goes beyond just sex, and it goes beyond just, being able to connect emotionally. It goes to being relatable because we understand from a similar perspective. So when you talk about anything, I could, as your partner, I could bring up a scripture reference in a conversation and you would know what I'm talking about. When we're watching a movie, we would laugh probably at similar moments because, again, we kind of have the same feel towards that. We have the same underlying value set. And we'd probably also sit in a movie theater and we might both be offended and choose to get up and walk out at the same time because, again, we are relatable in that way with that shared underlying value. So it translates in these very real and practical ways.
And it doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but those are extremely intimate moments.
Oh, those are huge moments.
Yeah. Like walking out of a movie together because you don't agree, that's a very intimate thing.
Yeah, for me personally, it was an interesting thing because I knew that, marrying somebody that was outside of my culture, I didn't realize that we had different values, right? But marrying someone that was outside of my culture, I kind of knew that if we were to watch funny shows, unless both people had a fluency in that language, one person's not going to find it that funny.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that. I saw it. But I kind of dismissed it, not thinking it was going to be that big of a deal. But oh man, when you, one after the next, like just these different moments in life, it doesn't matter whether it's a movie, a TV show, or just friends telling a joke, an environment, you're at a convention, you're whatever, and something funny happens, something, interesting happens, something, whatever happens, and you look to the person next to you to relate to them, and they didn't have the same experience that you just did.
That cuts intimacy.
That it destroys it. It's like all these moments for connection are gone.
Exactly. Because you can't share in something that if you both don't believe, then it's not going to work out.
Yeah. So when you share the same religion and you share the same underlying belief and value set there, then that offers a lot of moments for more relatability throughout everything you're doing, from the religious aspect to the ways that it ties into your daily life to your everything.
Yeah. And I think intimacy means like, it's not these big moments, like definitely like anniversaries or special moments. It's the everyday grind of living. And that's where the real intimacy is formed.
Yeah. So your next point was shared purpose. And I think this ties back to that couple that you mentioned.
Yeah. So that couple, it caused, at the time I was there, like it caused a lot of discussion because they were really following what they believed. And I really respected that. Mm-hmm. I was like, wow, that's amazing. Like you're a testament to your faith and you're doing it.
Now, what would happen with that same couple if one person was of that kind of devout spiritual belief of like, I believe in this. This is how I get closer to God. This is all of this. And what if the other person was just going to church because that's what they grew up with? It was tradition. What do you think would be different?
I think the person that was really devout, like they would just separate in terms of activities. The one person would be doing like higher end purpose-driven work where the other one is just kind of socializing, and their intimacy would start falling apart.
Would they still go on that mission together?
No way. Because the other person would be like, I'm not giving this up. Yeah. I like our lifestyle.
Yeah.
I don't believe this much. So eventually it would come to a head where their core values, they would be forced to address them.
Yeah.
And then that person would need to say, okay, I don't believe as much as you do.
Yeah.
This isn't as important to me as it is to you.
The other crazy piece of this to me is that over time, a person's value sets can shift and change. So we've seen a lot of cases where two people marry when they're young and both religious for what they believe are the same reasons, the desiring to get closer to God. And as they get older, one of them changes their mind, that they don't believe anymore, that they feel like, maybe they were lied to, or that this isn't truth, it's fictional. But for whatever it is, one is still devout and one is now no longer believing.
Yeah. And so there's the shared core values, but then we talk about counterbalanced effort, which is you're going to have similar core values, but things that are different. Are you going to take the time to do the things that are important to your partner? Yeah. And then start building a new set of values for yourself, because both of you are mentally and emotionally expanding in this relationship.
Yeah.
So that's another component, is nothing nothing is static. Everything is progressing and moving forward no matter what. And can you adjust and can you incorporate values that are important to each other?
Yeah, every time those values shift, every time we have like differences and interests and relatability, then that component we talk about, the framework, counterbalanced effort, what you just mentioned is this balanced effort within sustainability, the long-term maintenance of the relationship, right? Every time values differ and relatability suffers, the balanced effort from both individuals has to go up.
Yes.
You basically have to work harder to make things work.
And then we had an example with the couple, because we had one person who was very super devout. The other partner wasn't. It was more about status and culture. And so they had to learn to counterbalance each other. Whereas like, this is really important to me. So the other partner had to step up their game and take the time to say, okay, if you value this so much, I'm going to partake in this with you. And then that's where their intimacy grew. And that person started to feel more intimate with that partner. On the flip side, the person that wanted more security and resources that were available, it wasn't as important to the other partner. But then once he started realizing how important it was to their partner, that created greater intimacy for that other person as well. So now you had two shared values being shared and greater intimacy being formed.
Okay. So the next piece that I wanted to mention was another pro of sharing the same religion is just the common interest aspect. The more common interest that we share in any relationship, the more opportunities that we have to have quality time, to have time that we spend it. Was that burp actually loud, visible, noticeable?
I didn't notice.
Okay, we'll just leave it in then.
Okay.
Let's just keep going with this. Yeah, I had some soda right before this, and that was clearly a bad idea. But this common interest provides these opportunities where if we do believe in the same religion and we do appreciate, going to church and reading and doing all these things, then you have more opportunities naturally for quality time, for these highly engaging and meaningful activities without basically, again, adding more effort. You take away common interests, and once again, we have to raise effort because now I got to live in your world and you got to live in mine. And we just raise the bar of maintaining the relationship.
Yeah, it's a huge cost because when you're doing things because you don't want to do it, it's just more energy draining.
Look at this. We're mirroring right now.
Are we?
Yeah. We're like
we're fusing our common interest or
yeah, we're on the same cycle or something.
Like
we're just no, this is like a cycle. This mirroring is like a psychological behavior. Like
no, it is.
When you're in sync.
We are in sync.
We're in sync, bro.
I like you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we're not gonna sing or anything, but we are in sync. Okay. The last one that you had mentioned was community and a support system to the relationship. So that's the last pro of this.
Yeah. So if you really believe you have friends, support systems, separate together, you have religious leaders that can give you guidance. And I think one of the most beautiful things about religion in general is when people are suffering or there's a crisis or like an economic collapse or maybe someone loses their home or something tragic happens, you have the support of that community to get you through. And I think that's a huge plus.
Yeah. The community is one of the, it's a double-edged sword because it's one of the best and also it can be one of the worst aspects of any religion, right?
Yeah.
The side of supporting each other is amazing. The friends, the, genuine relationships that you can create is incredible. The flip side of that is the, not so great side of community, which is the gossiping and getting each other's business and
the backstabbing
and I'm holier than thou judgments type stuff. Like
and
the stuff that no religion tells you to do, but we just like to do as people.
It's true.
Right?
No, definitely. That's definitely a dark side of it.
Yeah.
That can take place. And then people saying and doing things in the name of God and religion when you're just being an asshole.
Yeah. And I guess the reason that I bring that up, it's not because I dislike religion. I don't want people to be like,
that we hate traditional counseling.
We hate traditional counseling. We hate religion.
Yeah.
We hate everything is in the hate category. No, I think religion can be great for those that, do believe and whatnot. What I'm saying is that we talked about those value sets. So imagine if you value the religion, the spiritual aspect, the growth, the relationship with God, that is your underlying value, but your partner's value set is social in nature, then you're probably going to get really annoyed and angry with the fact that your partner goes to church, spends time talking to friends, gossips, and does all this, because there is no religion, there is no spiritual teaching, at least as far as I know, that teaches you to, get in each other's shit. It's usually focus on yourself, be better, do not judge, like all that kind of stuff. So if you truly believe that, the fact that your partner is in each other's business and doing the exact thing, judging and constantly, is going to grind against you. And then when you do bring up religious conversations and spiritual conversations, and your partner's not really engaged or involved, so you create this, you're part of the same religion, but you've created this hyper disconnect where you're just going to grind against each other until you no longer respect the other person. Regard, the term that we use for respect and admiration, that starting point for wanting a relationship, that regard gets destroyed and damaged over time.
No, it's a beautiful thing. And then you bring up like the 3 components of sustainability. There's 2 others, right? But core values, shared core values, counterbalanced effort in the shared core values, and then the common interest that you have to partake in. So I'm having a brain fart right now. What was it?
Conflict resolution.
Conflict resolution.
Yeah. The same value. Yeah. We didn't even bring another pro of sharing and, the same underlying value within your religion is, it really does make conflict resolution better.
It does.
I mean, if you and I, let's just say we're married.
Okay.
Awesome. I can see that.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, cool. If we both believed in God and that we are children of God, and that was a genuine rooted core value, when we argue, it's not going to look like, dude, you're stupid.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk to somebody that way if I believe that they are also a child of God, right? I'm going to speak to you with the same love and respect as that underlying belief. So you have that, if you have that belief, again, on the conflict resolution side, your energy spent resolving conflict drops.
Agreed. And then you mentioned regard again, the respect and attraction that you have, that combination goes up.
It does.
Yeah.
Last thing, we have a 5th one. What about child raising?
That's another point, because if you have differing core values, even though you're not saying it, the child's internalizing both points of view, it's going to lead to confusion.
Yeah. And again, I feel like I'm kind of like kicking a dead horse now, but you're only going to not have, you're going to agree in terms of raising your children and the methodology and the approach, not because you share the same religion, but because of the same underlying value and belief in that religion, right? Because once again, let's say the mother that is devout and believes in God, and the father who is there for business and connections and, all this kind of stuff, they're going to have 2 completely different approaches to teaching and raising their kids, but they belong to the same religion.
Yeah. And on the outside, it looks like everything is great.
Yeah.
And then they're showing up on Sundays, they're laughing it up. But in the home, in the most intimate moments, they're not going to have any regard or intimacy whatsoever.
Yeah. Can I say that is one thing that bugs the shit out of me? I'm not gonna say any. I'm gonna give you my one and only true con of religion.
Go for it.
This is like my guitar solo. Can you give me a guitar solo? I like that. Why was your guitar solo?
I'm an air guitar, man. Sorry, man. I'm gonna work on that. I'm gonna work on that.
It wasn't Led Zeppelin or Jimi Hendrix. The only con that I have for religion is that what you just said, you would never know. That's my con. My con is the fact that human nature, we get into these communities, and it's human nature, regardless of what religion you belong to get in each other's business, to kind of hide your own issues, to not be real, to sort of say what you think other people want you to say and do because you want the praise and, you want them to think of you in a certain way. And the focus turns away from why we're there, which should be, spiritual and uplifting, this environment, and instead becomes this, holier than thou comparison, judgment / whatever it is, community. And I feel like that is so present that in any religion, it's difficult to focus on what you're there to do.
No, it's true. It becomes institutionalized. I mean, I think for me, once you get into groupthink, it becomes very, very toxic. And if it doesn't promote individual thinking, individuality, then that is not a healthy environment.
Well, and you stay for 10 years, and the same people who were preaching and judging and doing all this stuff, who put on the show of this perfect life, those same people 10 years later are divorced.
No, it's true.
And you find out that one person cheated on the other. And you find out that, it was an abusive relationship or whatever reason it might be. And I sit here wondering, what is this environment for? If we can't be real, if we can't be authentic, if we can't just focus on ourselves and realize that, hey, as humans, we suck sometimes, then why are we there?
No, I agree. I mean, I think like even in general, people do things on a more superficial, like they have to go deeper to understand why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And most people don't do that.
Yeah.
And then I think, sometimes like even for me, like when I was trying to see if I really believed in it or not, I remember there was like a study, and then everyone went around and then they're like, if you're at the gate of heaven and God asks you, why should I let you into heaven? Then what would you say? And everyone said the same answer, because I believe in Christ and, I confess my sins and so please let me in. Mm-hmm. So when they asked me, because, it came around and then they asked me the same question, like, why should God let you in? And I go, honestly. And then I go, because that wouldn't be my answer. And there was your answer. And I said, because you know what you created. Mm-hmm. You know what you created. If you're so mad, be mad at yourself because you created me.
Yeah.
Right. And then that caused like so much friction. And then they started pulling out the Bible. And then one person was talking about like how, with the grain of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. So then I asked, was like, is that literal or is that figurative? Right. And then they said both. And I go, so let's go move that mountain right now, right? And then I go, because if it's figurative, then maybe this whole concept of hell is figurative too, right?
Yeah.
And then I saw the reaction, like just that conversation, like one person was crying, and then one person was like, you're evil. And then
you are evil, bro.
I was evil. And then that took me aback. And then I was kind of like, because my parents like, just go.
One person's
and
crying.
my dad was
their dreams are shattered.
My dad, he was so mad. He was like, all I asked you to do was try to find a wife at church, man. And look at what you're doing. I go, but no, I'm really trying to figure this out for myself. Like he was really upset. That's
what's funny is because that again ties to your father's core value of why he was there. All I asked you to do was find a wife.
Just find a girlfriend, right? Like, I think, but I'm really trying to understand this. But it became this thing. And then after that, like, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I was kind of in this superficial space of just like making friends. And then I just couldn't do it anymore. Like that was it for me. And so, I never like went back after that.
That to me is really the only con and also scary place of religion. Because if you do believe, I mean, there's so many positive benefits that a person can get. I'm not religious, but I have my own spiritual beliefs. I still pray and I do all these things. I meditate, each day. This is part of my life because there are tons of benefits in these, religious frameworks that are taught. And in just believing in a higher power and all that kind of stuff. But the scary side is you need to know why a person is going. You need to know why they're religious. Because if you don't share that same why, you're in trouble. And now going back to the question. So my boyfriend's parents don't want him to continue dating me because I'm not part of their religion. What should I do? Then we get back to kind of the two red flags.
Yeah. So number one, he dated outside of his religion. So his core value is probably he doesn't care.
It doesn't sound like
he doesn't
religion's
care.
A huge piece for him.
Because if it was, he would have brought that up during the time that they're dating.
Correct.
So that's number one.
Or like you said earlier, he wouldn't have dated outside to begin with.
Yeah. And then to me, like with all due respect, like he's just deflecting.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's like, it's my parents. So if I were her, I would be like a direct line and I'll be like, regardless of your parents, you're in this religion. How much do you really believe? And then if so, then why did you date someone that you didn't believe, that doesn't believe?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you don't believe that much, are you man enough to say to your parents that I'm still going to date this, you're still going to date me regardless or be with me regardless? Those are the bigger questions to ask.
Well, and when you ask those questions, that sounds harsh, right? But when you ask those questions, if you say, are you man enough? I mean, come on, bro. What if it's a woman? Are you woman enough?
Do you have the courage and the conviction?
Let's be PC.
Okay,
with
I'm
how
sorry.
we act.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Kidding.
I'm sorry.
I'm kidding.
I'm sorry. Do you have the? Okay, my bad. Do you have, my bad. I'm a
How do we say
confessor.
sorry in Korean? I feel like we need to know that word. We know sorry in English. In Chinese, it's 对不起.
You have the two
对不起.
Asian men in here, and you're teaching us like Chinese. See that? Because I don't even speak
I
Korean.
just feel
My
like
Korean
we're going to need
sucks.
to apologize in every language as we
What is
go
it?
forward. in this.
미안해요, right? 미안해요.
Formally speaking, be 죄송합니다.
죄송합니다. 죄송합니다.
Wait, what is it?
죄송합니다.
Why is Korean word? Why are they so difficult? Ches what?
죄송합니다.
죄송합니다. 죄송합니다. Okay.
Yeah. I love the last podcast because you're teaching us, the two Asian people, about Chinese. That was beautiful. Like I love it.
Spend a lot of time in
Yeah, I know.
Chinese culture. For those that don't know, I speak Cantonese and Mandarin.
Cantonese man fluently.
And lived in China and all sorts of stuff. But anyway, yes, you are absolutely right. That, you need to ask each of those questions down to, okay, if you don't believe in the religion wholeheartedly, then can you admit that you are making this decision because of your parents? And are you willing to go against what your parents are saying? Because if your boyfriend isn't, then you just discovered his underlying value set, which is to make his parents happy. That is his primary goal. That's going to dictate a lot of what he does. That's going to dictate his job, the person that he marries. Each of the things, all the decisions that he's making is to, out of respect for his parents and to get their praise and attention, which could be fine, I guess.
I guess, but it's also a form of triangulation. So everything's going to go through the parents. So this is a big discussion to have.
Mm-hmm.
And then, in the future, if you stay together with this person and this continues to happen, the parents are going to be involved in everything you guys do.
Yeah, or you just walk away.
Or you could just walk away.
Okay.
But have the discussion, be direct. And then instead of deflecting to the parents, like that to me is just nothing but an excuse. He needs to be accountable and say like, why did I do this? Why did I choose you? Am I willing to do this and say, I care enough about you to tell my parents that we're in a relationship together.
Okay. And the other red flag we mentioned was that, being in the same religion doesn't mean that you share the same values. And to the other side of this, a lot of people consider converting for the sake of that person, right?
Sure. I mean, if you're in your heart, like you feel like it's worth it to do and you want to incorporate it, that would be a counterbalanced effort thing. But he would also need to counterbalance and say, I'm also going to stay with you regardless of what my parents say. There has to be some counterbalance there.
Yeah. And it's almost like that converting thing is scary to me. If you're converting for another person, oh man, that is case after case, always going to be something that comes up. I did this for you. I joined your religion. Why can't you even take out the trash? Why can't you do this? Why aren't you trying with my family? I did this. So it almost has to be like, if you are going to convert, I feel like the person has to understand in our marriage why you're going to, like, why you're religious. And if it is something spiritual in nature, I should only convert if I can genuinely say that it's for me and it's spiritually for me too. Because if not, if I'm doing it for you, that's always going to be an area where we're not going to connect anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think in an extreme level, that makes sense. But I have like a couples friend, like one is very devout and the other one isn't.
Mm-hmm.
But they had the discussion because this person was like, it's very important to me to have like certain things that the kids do, but I'll incorporate some of the things that's important to you. And then so they reached a balance point of kind of doing both. And I feel like that kind of compromise or conversion is okay.
It works, but that goes back to both people have to adopt one another's core values,
Correct.
kind of coming to the center.
Correct.
And they have to raise the bar of effort. So
yes, they have to be willing to do so.
They have to be both willing to put in more effort. And if your partner is always expecting you, like let's say I convert to your religion, if you're always expecting me to be as devout and, to be reading my scriptures and to be praying and to be doing the things for the same reasons that you are, you're going to be continuously disappointed by the fact that I'm not, because I did it for you.
No, agreed. So there has to be an understanding. So it'd be like, you're doing this, you're making some conversions and counterbalance effort on my part, and I accept the amount that you're putting in.
Yeah. So this gets me back to just run away.
There you go. So we should have just ended the show earlier. Just don't do it.
I mean, I said it was a spoiler alert. I was like, not to ruin it for you, but yeah. In my opinion, this scenario is not a good one, and unless this boyfriend is like the greatest thing since sliced bread, I wouldn't be, making this consideration.
Maybe he is though. So maybe it's just at least have the discussion. Have the discussion.
Yeah, but he's not.
Okay.
I'm just teasing. He might
Okay.
be. Maybe he is.
Maybe
Okay.
he is. Who knows? But have the discussion.
You're the rational, logical, one between the two of us.
Just have the discussion and be direct, and then don't use the parent excuse. Like, be direct with him.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's it for this episode. Hope you guys all enjoyed. Like we said earlier, we now have one-on-one coaching available for both individuals and couples with Dr. Glenn. So you guys can sign up for a free consult where he can kind of explain over the phone, what exactly he can do for your relationship. And you can find out and sign up all at 12weekrelationships.com. In the meantime, there's also a fun relationship quiz and self-assessment tool there. Kind of like, you can use it for any relationship. It could be a friendship, family, whatever you'd like, but it's going to pinpoint areas of that relationship that might be pain points, things to work on. It's just a fun assessment tool. And that's it for us in this episode. We'd love, of course, for you guys to subscribe to the podcast. If you want to help us out, if you found this interesting, insightful, feel free to share the podcast with your friends. But really, the biggest help you can give us is going to the iTunes store and leaving a review on the episode or on just the 12-Week Relationships podcast. Please, only if it's a good review. We don't really need people to go and give us 1-star reviews,
Yeah, hopefully not.
Yeah, leave us 1-star comments, you can blast us, whatever you want. Yeah, do that. Just not reviews. But also, if you guys have questions and topics that you guys want discussed in future episodes, be sure to drop us a line. You guys can find us on 12-Week Relationships on Instagram. And that's it for us. So we'll see you all in the next episode.
Thank you.
Peace.